Welcome to Unfamiliar Territory, an anime podcast hosted by two white dudes who've been friends for over 15 years. We talk about the history and influence of anime, as well as review anime new and old, believe in the stars, and sail away for the future into unfamiliar territory.
My name is Grant.
And I'm Brantley. Heads up, spoilers on the way. Check the description, see if you're safe to listen. Grant, have you ever had an oh, they know moment when you're watching media, playing a game, etc.?
Yeah.
You know, like oh, they get it. You know, oh, I know that you know, and we're on the same. You know, do you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
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 I think that Lycoris Recoil has an oh, they know moment.
What was your oh, they know moment?
Definitely the part where Chisato picks up Takina and swings her around. There's like people looking and like, you know, they're like whispering about it and whatever, and she just doesn't care and like embraces it more. It's just like, oh yeah, oh totally. Yeah.
What do they say there? They say something like they have a case of like the adolescence or something.
Yeah.
Oh man. It's been a hot minute since we've recorded an episode, and it's been a hot minute since we watched Lycoris Recoil. But I'm happy to finally get to talk about it.
Yeah, I think it is held up surprisingly well in my memory. You know, moments like that where it's just like, oh yeah, they get it, right? For me, I think it took a little while before I totally was like kind of trusting the show. I was like, I don't know how well they're going to handle it. But moments like that are just like, oh, totally. Like I don't have to worry, you know?
Yeah.
Did you have one of those moments?
Yeah, but different times. So I'll
we'll
get into it. But let's talk about what Lycoris Recoil is for those that don't know. It is a girls with guns anime. It has the three G's that I need for a good show: girls, guns, and gays. And it is about two girls who are part of the secret state police, which is a terrible way to describe them, but it is what they are, trying to stop terrorist attacks in Japan. So this long-term prologue, like a Japanese piece that they talk about, is all a ruse that is being kind of kept up by this orphan group of girls that are running around as spies and assassins. It was created by A1 Pictures. It was directed by Shingo Adachi, and it was written by Asura. And it is anime original. And hot damn, for being an anime original, this show made so much waves. Usually when you get an anime original, you get a couple people like, holy shit, I can't believe this is going under the radar. But this was by far one of the most prolific releases of 2022.
Mm-hmm. Would you say that its sort of reaching popularity was a bigger splash than we saw with Tact Op last time?
Yeah, I feel like Tact Op was... A lot of people got really into its concept, and they were really interested in watching it, but it didn't reach the mainstream popularity that I think Lycoris did. And for the most part, Lycoris does everything that Tact Op wants to do in terms of animation and fights, and it just does it better. I know they're completely different shows, but I think it has to do with Chisato and Destiny kind of having similar charter visuals.
Well, I mean,
that they're...
Yeah, Takina was the voice of... Takina's voice actress. Shion Wakayama was actually voice actress for Destiny. So we at least have one connection there.
Yeah. I think it's big. I would be absolutely shocked if this show doesn't get a second season.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they definitely set up for it, and strong ratings on my anime list, which means nothing for that, but at the very least, maybe it's some indicator of viewership.
Well, and they left on a cliffhanger. I know they wanted to branch out into other things. There's currently a manga running about stuff that happens in like the downtime of the show. Overall, good show. Weak themes, I think. At least to me. Mm-hmm. I think there are potential to be strong themes, but I think this show struggles in reaching a conclusion of what it wants to be. And that's okay, but we'll talk about it when we get to themes. So let's kind of go over some of the plot synopsises we got. So the first episode of Lycoris Recoil is sort of a prologue to what the show is going to be. It kind of goes into the idea of the DA, which employs the girls to be the secret agents of Japan. And during this time, there is sort of they're trying to stop these weapon shipments from going out, and one of our protagonists, Takina, takes up a machine gun and just shoots the fuck out of some people. And oh no, that wasn't what you were supposed to do, and everyone hates her for it. So she gets she gets her badge taken away, and she goes to Cafe Lycoris, which is run by a former DA agent, run by a DA, the head of the DA, Mika, and a DA agent, another Lycoris, Mizuki Nakahara. So there is this kind of subsect of the Lycoris that is just a cafe, and during this time we see that they just sort of help around the neighborhood, and you meet Chisato, who is the most, what is it called in Genki?
She is your go-getter, optimistic, bubbly, like,
yeah, it's
all
Genki.
the time.
It's a Genki girl.
Yeah.
And she is fucking the voice actress of her, which is
Chika Anzai.
Chika Anzai. He's fucking going ham with this character.
Mm-hmm.
It, like, all her screams, which is normally grating, are really entertaining. The way that she acts to other characters is fun, and the animation of the show is actually really good. They do a lot of subtle body movements that are really good at presenting the body language of these characters in a way that is fun, but also, if you really are one of those people that like to dig deep into things, you can kind of see it. Mm-hmm. But they get information on the weapons deal after they go through a long day of, like, helping a school, teaching Japanese to people, and they find a waitress who's being stalked, and so they're hired as her bodyguards, and they figure out that the reason she's being stalked is she has a picture of the weapons deal. And so when she gets captured, Takina and Chisato beat the shit out of the terrorists, and you learn that Chisato doesn't kill people, which is very important. I'm on the Wikipedia right now just to make sure I remember everything.
Yeah.
And Wikipedia suggests that the plot summary may be too long or excessively detailed.
Well, all right then. Well, so I guess maybe that means we should try to wrap this up in, like, 30 minutes, as to not get excessive or into too much detail. Editor's note. Not gonna happen.
So I really liked the first episode when I saw it. I liked the idea of this entire evil, or at least morally ambiguous, state police being kind of dicks to their, what essentially is their best agent in the field at the time. And they talk about how there's this incredibly competent, dangerous girl that they use for all their special missions, and she is just this absolute ball of sunshine. It was a really fun juxtaposition to what you would imagine it to be, but hot damn, was that I saw that first episode so many times. Mm-hmm. I showed it to so many people.
Yeah.
It's fun. The action sequences are good. The characters are personable. I was at least interested in watching the entire show right away. Mm-hmm. Would you say you were too, or do you think you have, like, were you a little hesitant?
I had doubts, but, like, mostly because I was picking up on the buddy cop vibes, but I was a little afraid that we wouldn't hit, like, buddy anti-cop vibes, you know? I was, and like, still, like, jury's out as opposed to season 1, but they, you know, largely lean into, you know, like, when it comes to where the protagonist lens is, on Chisato and Takina, it's mainly focused on, like, you know, doing good outside of, sort of, say, the DA as state police, and you know,
Mhm.
the arcs of the show basically are focused on like helping people and sort of like, you know, not abiding strictly by like, oh, these are, you know, these are the big powers at play, we follow our orders, we do the job. um that's the kind of thing I dig and that you dig. And I was a
Yeah.
little worried at first that they wouldn't get there, but um as we find in the plot, you know, they at least are giving the winks and nods in the right direction, right? So
Yeah, yeah, and I'll come out and say I'm a little disappointed that they really didn't tackle this topic super much,
mhm.
but they kind of hinted at
They
it.
say ACAB in whispers but not shouts.
Yeah, because they're too busy shouting "Love is love."
um they, at the very least, you are going to get like for example, late on in the show, cases of like, oh, here's a situation where violence was elevated by a cop because they didn't assess the situation very well, you know. And it's like
Right.
they wouldn't put that in there if they didn't have that intentional in the writing, right?
Yeah,
um
the only problem we have is these cops are teenage girls. So it's a little
yeah,
awkward where it's like, oh, that cop elevated the situation. It's like, yeah, but it's also a child.
well, at the very least, there's a part in the end of the show, in the climax, where things kick off because a like regular cop
Oh,
makes a
that's
bad
right.
move.
That's right.
So yeah, we
That's
will
right.
get there.
Yeah.
But safe to say, if you are also someone um of the ACAB belief system, if we could call it that, then yeah, you can at least like, you can rest up on this show.
Yeah, there are absolutely good ways to talk about what the show does wrong, but I don't think it is done in a way that is it's not propaganda. I don't think it was made to uh, praise state police. I just think that it happens to be something that you could easily see as being done here.
Mhm.
And the first episode is kind of one of those that lampshades it a little bit as it being a bad thing, because when Takina talks to Mizuki, Mizuki's like, yeah, no, you Lycoris are weird. You're a bunch of orphan girls taken by the government. That's fucked up. And no one mentions it again.
Yeah, yeah.
But it at least shows that there are people who see this as a weird thing. So in the next episode, the hacker that helped leak where the Lycoris were going to be during the initial weapons attack is a hacker named Walnut, and they are being tasked with saving Walnut from being assassinated by a man named Yoshi, right? Or
Yeah, if you're talking about Yoshimatsu, then
yeah, Yoshimatsu. Yoshimatsu tried to kill Walnut because Walnut was the one that leaked the data for Yoshimatsu, who is part of something called the Allen Institute. The Allen Institute is a group of people who find people and give them money to be the best at what they are. And as a public figure, this is mostly like skateboarding or science. But Yoshimatsu's weird as hell. And he's like, yes, I'm going to give this to someone who's good at being a terrorist because I think that's what the world needs. It's kind of one of those, how should I put it, Joker-esque character ideals, where it's like, if we allow everyone to be the best, eventually the world would be okay. And you just kind of got to accept that it's a very, very flawed way of looking at the world, but
yeah,
it works in this show.
It's one of the more cartoony elements of the show, and there are plenty of those in this. This is not like a straight drama or something like that.
Right.
But in the sense that it's trying to exemplify like, oh, here's a radical thing, here's something extreme, and here's how it's going to play out. Then yeah, I feel like it's still it doesn't fall too far out of scope about like what the show kind of has capacity to handle. So I think like the Batman kind of analogy works here. I think that it's in that range where it's like, clearly it is it's hyperbole, but it's still trying to use that to talk about something that's a little more real than what's shown.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. And so they try and escort Walnut, who is wearing this big ass mascot costume that is a squirrel or a chipmunk. I can't remember, but neither can the characters because they call it different things all the time. Sort of a running gag. You also get a really good part where Chisato is really excited to see a sports car. I love that scene. It's very funny. But in this episode, there's a couple things that happen that are really, really good. There's a part where Chisato, where Takina shoots a guy and he's almost dead, or he needs treatment, and Chisato gives him first aid. And while he's talking, she's like, "What are you gonna do tonight?" And he's like, "Excuse me," and she's like, "What? You got dinner with family or something?" And I think that is one of the most realistic, not realistic. It's a deep cut for episode 2.
Mm-hmm.
It really gives you an idea of Chisato's philosophy in terms of what she does, because she is humanizing what should be essentially grunts, right? She is humanizing the people who are trying to kill her, and she's doing it in a way that is essentially talking about how the systemic oppressions of the world mean that sometimes people are going to do stuff like this, and they're not necessarily bad people for doing this. Now, obviously, that's a little black and white way of looking at things, but it is a really good take on this kind of character archetype.
Mm-hmm.
It reminds me a lot of, like, Vash the Stampede.
Yeah,
right?
That's exactly what I was thinking.
Where you have a character who is an absolute killer, and being able to humanize the enemy is both a weakness to them, but also a strength. And I think they play into that really, really well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And then Walnut gets shot up and dies. Just kidding. It was all a ruse. Mizuki was in the Walnut suit, and Walnut is actually a child who's a hacker. Whoa.
Yep.
She's fun. I think this episode is decent. I don't think it's the strongest episode of the show, but I think it is. It definitely shows the action a little bit better. I know a lot of people got on Chisato dodging the machine gun fire in that scene.
Yeah.
There was a lot of talk during that time of whether she was psychic or if she had just great at reflexes. And it was very funny seeing people just talk shit about it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. This is kind of like your make or break point. An integral part of the show is that Chisato basically cannot be hit. Which is like it's the shonen thing, right? It's also very Vash the Stampede now that I think about it.
And Spike Spiegel.
Yeah, right? But I think that because of the aesthetics of the show, and other stylings about it, the fact that it's taking place in a realistic world as opposed to a fantasy one, that it's not the far-flung future, it's not in outer space, it's not, etc. The fact that it's just in kind of real places in the world, I think this might be where people get turned off, right? If that dissonance is too much, where like Chisato having that superhuman ability to dodge bullets is gonna bother you, then you're only gonna get more of that later. So you might save yourself that trouble. But frankly, as someone who was kind of worried about that at the beginning, eventually, it really didn't bother me. It requires you to lean into it and accept that this is not a show about like military strategy and tactical precision all the time. Sometimes it's going to be about making cool moments. Sometimes it's going to be about, Chisato being unbelievably, like literally unbelievably good at what she does. And so you're going to have to accept that this is actually fantastical, even though it's veiled as a realistic show. So.
I gotta be real. When people are complaining about how their teenage girl assassins are too powerful, I feel like you're kind of already not suspending your disbelief enough.
Mm-hmm.
Like, teenagers don't make good assassins, and nowhere in the world will this ever be a thing like this,
mm-hmm.
right? Like, this is a trope.
Yeah.
And that's okay. And so having them dodge bullets to me is not that much more far-fetched.
Exactly. Yep.
This is also the one where they explain why they wear school uniforms instead of like military uniforms,
mm-hmm.
Which, weirdly enough, is probably the most believable, like one of the most believable reasons I've ever seen in an anime for it. They're just like, oh yeah, because we want to blend in, we dress as schoolgirls so that people just think we're high school students.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's the plainclothes thing, but then you take it another notch.
Right, and it's like, oh yeah, that makes sense. I mean, it's still silly. I mean, they're good. The outfits are great, are super cool designs, I think.
Mm-hmm.
But, yeah, it's still a lot of like, well, because of this reason.
I think I can appreciate that they take it seriously enough that they eventually will problematize the fact that the uniforms are consistent.
Yes,
where it's like, oh, you can pick them out. Like once you know. So, I like that they're willing to take those strengths and weaknesses within the plot and treat them as such. And I think that's also where there's a little bit of that dissonance where they treat that pretty realistically, that someone could notice like, hey, your school uniform being a particular military uniform that doesn't abide by, say, a certain school or something, means that you can actually identify one of these like undercover agents, which I mean, like, I know, like, I've seen Chelsea Manning point out like, oh, here's how you spot a Fed. You look for the sunglasses clipped into the shirt collar so that it hides like the microphone. You look for like this specific kind of like sturdy, well polished boot. Like there's like things like that, right? Like this is a realistic thing, where like even plain clothes can be kind of spotted out as that. In protests as well, when people notice like, hey, you can spot the cops sort of like in sort of penetrating the area based on like, hey, watch for these tattoos, or notice that like they're wearing certain coverings on certain areas. You can spot wires underneath tight-fitting clothes, or like body armor and stuff. Like, yeah, there's a layer of realism here that we're also getting with like Matrix style bullet dodging. So you have to take both with the show.
Yeah, it cares a lot about the rules that it establishes, and doesn't care about the rules it doesn't care about.
Yeah,
and you just that just happens. That's something that's gonna happen. Sorry.
Mm-hmm.
So I liked episode 2. It was fun. I was a little hesitant with Kurumi Walnut, just because when a show introduces a little girl character, sometimes it's done terribly.
Mm-hmm.
Episode 3 is great. They go back to the DA to do a physical exam, and Chisato is talking to Takina's original field commander, Fuki, and she's basically telling Fuki that she's being a butthead and she needs to realize that it wasn't Takina's fault. And one of the things I love about Chisato is there is the head of the DA, who was named, what was her name?
Kusunoki.
Kusunoki, yeah. And she's just like, hey, you suck ass. Put Takina back on. And she's like, why are you telling me this? You are my subordinate. And Chisato's like, I don't give a shit. And I'm like, fuck yeah, Chisato.
Very
kick
anarchist
ass
of her.
Yeah. And so Fuki and her new second command, Sakura, challenge Chisato and Takina to a fight. And hot damn, is it one of the most exciting parts of the show. There's like almost no stakes in it, but Takina doesn't want to do it because she doesn't want to lose, and she doesn't want to put herself into the limelight. And this is also where the Chisato lifting up Takina scene comes from.
Oh, yeah.
Where Chisato is like, I'm so glad you're my partner. I want to spend more time with you. It's very gay.
Extremely.
It's incredibly gay. But I like it. I like it a lot. I also like the part where Chisato won't shoot Fuki because she wants Takina to do it. So she's just like toying with them. She like disarms them and then gives them their guns back. And she's like, here, let me show you how this is done. She's like, keep it close to you or I'm going to do this. And she takes the gun. That part fucking rules. It's just pure competence, but pure silliness.
Yeah.
And then Takina enters the fray and just punches the shit out of Fuki. I mean, and it parallels the fact that Fuki punched Takina in the first episode. There's a reason she punched her. It wasn't just because she was mad.
Yeah, good catch on that.
It's a fun episode. I think this is, if episode 2 is kind of like the weak part of the first 3 episodes, episode 3 is what sold me that this show is going to be something cool.
Yep. I 100% agree.
Episode 4 sucks. But doesn't. It's weird.
It's on a fine line.
Episode 4 has the problem where they take something that could be silly, but watching it as an adult man makes you uncomfortable. And the way they handle it, being written by an adult man, is also weird and uncomfortable. And they use it to do weird and uncomfortable stuff. However, they also use it to do really good character building. And it's a weird episode.
Yeah.
Chisato realizes that Takina wears shorts under her skirt. Oh no. So Chisato wants to take her clothes shopping so she can have better underwear, which is a stupid premise. Because you could do that premise without making it about underwear. You could be like, hey, let's go out on the town tonight. And Takina's like, I will put on this. And it's like, oh no, you don't need to wear your uniform. And she's like, well, I don't have any civilian clothes. And then they go clothes shopping. And then you completely negate all the weird stuff that would happen in this episode. But it's fine. They basically go on a little date where they go to a restaurant and eat a bunch of calories, and Takina's like, this is not a good meal. And Chisato's like, of course it's not. It's candy. It's great. And they go to the aquarium. I love the aquarium scene. And so does fucking everybody. Because they animate them pretending to be fish on like -1s. It's just very fluid for like a minute. And it's a good way to kind of open up Takina a little bit. I was a little worried that Takina was going to kind of be this, oh, I'm so edgy and dull and I have no emotions. But they quickly take that away from her, right? They quickly break that trope down pretty quickly. And episode 4 is kind of the one that does it the most. And then Majima, who's our antagonist, is a green-haired Joker type 2 who wants to cause chaos because he doesn't believe in the state police, which is fair. But he does this by trying to derail a train and kill a bunch of people, and then he gets caught by Lycoris. And then he blows up a bomb that caused a lot of deaths, and they cover it up. The government covers it up.
Yep.
What do you think about episode 4? And I guess I didn't ask you. What do you think about episode 3?
Well, episode 3, I totally agree on. Episode 4 is tricky. Like, it's like I don't think it's inherently wrong to have an episode that's centered on the teenage girl characters talking about underwear, right? And like,
yeah, like doing teenage girl stuff, right?
Right,
like,
exactly.
Sure.
And so like part of that is like, yeah, I feel like this would be very like, maybe this would be, great for someone in this age range, right? Like I think some people might find this absolutely hilarious. What I don't like is like sort of there's certain aspects of it that just like, okay, that's not cool. Like,
yeah.
Okay, so, to sort of draw lines, right? Like, they're playing games at the beginning, and you know, Takina does like it's like a motion controlled thing. I think it's like a VR headset, and she does a big motion, and the characters accidentally see up her dress, and then that's how they figure out, that she's wearing boxers. Like, sure, whatever. Like, it happens, right? It's clothes. Um, but then like later on, when characters are like grab, I think it's Mizuki in particular is like grabbing someone and trying to pull up their dress to see. I don't remember if it's Chisato or Takina. She's doing it too.
It's Chisato, because Chisato tried on the boxers and she liked them.
And so it's like, don't grab people like that, right? Just be cool, for God's sakes. Like I think the part where like Takina is in the middle of changing and is trying to have a conversation with Chisato, and she's just like opening the door, and so Chisato slams it shut on her, and then she looks over and Mika's right there, and he's just already like not looking and just kind of like uncomfortable. I feel like that was like, it's like, yeah, that's fine.
That's a good gag like that.
Right. They're pushing like a strange situation, and it feels more like paternal awkward than like anime fan service, right? Because the fan service is not happening. You as the viewer are not getting some like eye candy out of it, and similar things are happening through the episode, right, where they're talking about these things, but although the characters are supposed to be perceiving them, you as the viewer don't get that benefit. I feel like that does help draw the line. But like, Jesus Christ, don't just like don't just pants someone, right? Like in the dressing room. It's just like, just don't do it. That's where it's like, yeah, that's less cool. Yep. And then of course Majima being introduced. I think Majima is another one that takes some time to be sold on. Because there's a great chance that he'll just end up one note, right? Like, his idealism as a defining characteristic is going to seem that way, because it's that, right? Idealism is going to be very straightforward in that sense. And so it's one of those like, I was very cool with things on episode 3, and now this has me a little worried. But I still feel like it turns up. So yeah. This is a shaky point. But it did turn out. So moving on from that, we do get to episode 5, right?
Yeah, and episode 5 is the episode where Chisato and Takina, it's also where you find out that Chisato has an artificial heart, and they do this. They show this in the most gay way possible. Like, I know this is at the end of the episode, but I just want to get it out of the way.
Yeah.
Where Chisato's like laying down and Takina puts her head against her chest to hear that she doesn't have a heartbeat, and they just lay there for a little bit, and it's like, come on.
Mm-hmm.
But they their mission is to give a tour to a terminally ill person named Matsushita around Japan. It's sort of like an extension of episode 4, where Chisato and Takina are just kind of showing the coolness of Japan, and they find out that there is an assassin following them around named Jin, who worked with Mika 15 years before this. Takina tries to stop him, and Jin killed Matsushita, the terminally old man, a while ago, and Matsushita wants Chisato to kill Jin, and she can't do it because she doesn't kill. So Chisato injures him, and Jin injures Takina, and Matsushita is like, you have to kill him, and Chisato doesn't. And Matsushita dies because his life support stops working, but he was actually never there. he was essentially a puppet, and the person that was controlling him was part of the Allen Institute, who really, really, really wants Chisato to kill people, because that's what Chisato is supposed to be the best at, is killing people. And then Majima kills a teenage girl who's a Lycoris, which is, you're like, ah, man, he's kind of a bastard. Majima's a weird character, but we'll talk a little bit about that. Do you have anything particular to say about episode 5?
This one's a weird one. It's unlike episode 4, which is I would say mostly like slice of life gags and stuff. This one is like clearly alternating, like, more, or at least there's like episode 4 is more evenly divided between action time and like, relaxing time, I think. And so sort of coming off of episode 4 could be a relief to some people, or maybe might just be like, oh no, they're doing more of this like slice of life stuff. Again, might be where people drop, but hey, we stuck with it. And so this episode left me with a lot of questions, but I think I was happy about that. A lot of this show is straightforward. It's very plot driven. I think you mentioned where like themes are something it kind of falters on. I think it's because it's attempting to communicate its messages through stories. There's not a lot to interpret. It's just things happen and then you take away from them what you will. And like the characters are taking such heavy stances that it's not in a position where you have to kind of step out away from it and then like make your own decision on what happened, but this might be one of them where you're kind of in this hanging position where it's like, oh, here's a case where Chisato's strong faith in people is challenged. We have a situation where everyone was kind of taken advantage of, and now we have all these like moral gray zones that we're working our way through. It kind of like, I don't know that it carries very smoothly into the other episodes after this, but it is communicating more of what the show's trying to get into, which is like, tension between Chisato's ideals and reality.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I totally agree. Episode 6 kind of is the, I guess, middle point, I would say, for this show. Majima is mad because Chisato keeps overthrowing his plans, and also he's scared of Chisato. He thinks he's he thinks she's incredibly dangerous to him. So he gives his hacker Robota, he's like, kill Chisato. And Takina and Chisato, to ensure each other's safety, live together. And they have, Chisato has 2 apartments. She has one, and then she has a secret entrance to another so that she can hide. And in this, she mentions that Lilybell has come to talk to her sometime, and we don't really know who Lilybell is. But a couple people try and enter her building, and she beats the shit out of them. It's the first part of it is pretty cute. And it's really, they separate their chores based on rock paper scissors, and Chisato keeps winning, so Takina has to do all the chores, which is important to the end. But during this time, this is the one where I think Chisato goes out and she wears her poncho so that she can avoid being seen, and Majima ambushes her and tries to kill her, but Mika and Takina save her, and then Kurumi crashes a drone into a guy with a rocket launcher, and it blows up Majima, but of course he survives. And then they do rock paper scissors, and they told Takina how to beat Chisato, and it was very cute because she gets really excited about it. Episode 6 is good. It's kind of it's it's sort of the springboard from the more slice of lifey stuff to a bigger, overlooming threat.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would agree with that.
Episode 7 is where Chisato and Takina stalk Mika, because Mika is meeting up with Yoshimatsu, who they're going out to a bar. And boy, oh boy, does Chisato and Takina wear the most gay-coded couple's outfit I've ever seen. Chisato's wearing like this fancy dress, and Takina's wearing like a well-tailored suit. It's just great. Because they're trying to stalk Mika, because they're afraid that Lycoris Recoil, the cafe, is going to get shut down, and they as they're stalking Mika, he is meeting up with Yoshimatsu, and it is revealed that those two were dating at one point, which was a fucking huge revelation for me.
Mm-hmm.
Oh god, I love Mika. We'll talk about characters in the whole later, but Chisato realizes that it's Yoshimatsu who he's with, and she breaks her cover, and she's like, "Thank you for saving my life. Thank you for giving me this heart." And then Mika's like, "Hey Yoshimatsu, leave Chisato the fuck alone." But Yoshimatsu's like, "Nah, I won't." And during this time, the B plot is how Robota and Majima are going to hack the DA's database. Episode 7 was good. I think having a little bit more understanding of who Yoshimatsu makes the overarching plot a lot more interesting.
Mm-hmm. Yep, I agree with that. Up until this episode, we had kept it was almost like this very cartoony result where episode after episode, it's like, you know, who's the one causing these things, who's the one, you know, who's responsible, and it would come up and it's Yoshimatsu, but we don't really know who Yoshimatsu is all that well yet, and so it's like at some point it starts to wear on me a little bit, or, you know, it's like, okay, we get it, Yoshimatsu is important, when are we going to get to know about him more?
Right.
Like, enough burying the lead. Hold on, is it burying the lead or is it burying the lead?
I think it's burying the lead, although they do bury a lot of lead in people's bodies in this show. Ayo, guns.
Yeah, bury the lead. Okay. Yeah, so they do that, you know, it's, you know, time and time again, oh, it's Yoshimatsu, okay, well, why should I care, right? Especially when Majima is right there, and they're, hyping him up as kind of, the primary antagonist. Some of the references back to Yoshimatsu can just feel unnecessary. So it's like, we can't do anything with this, you know?
Right.
They're jabbing you in the ribs about Yoshimatsu, but there's nothing summative that we can have about that. So eventually, finally having a sit down with him and getting that tension in the spotlight is really good. And of course, the added romantic tension involved is also it's like, whoa, you know, it's another one of these, oh, they know, you know.
Yeah,
kind of
they
things.
know. And it definitely leads to one of the best parts in the entire show. And the next episode actually is very similar, but instead of it being about Yoshimatsu, it's about Majima. So Lycoris Recoil has some problems, and during this time, Takina is in charge of finances, and so she creates this pastry that looks like shit. I mean, it looks terrible. It looks like an actual pile of shit. And people love it, right? Because it's you know, bad food sells, Steve. And so they people are coming to take pictures and post it on Instagram, and they become incredibly busy. Having the little montage of them trying to use less resources during their missions and using the money to buy stuff that makes everyone happy. I like that part. I think it's a fun part. But then Majima is in Chisato's house, and he just talks to her about the radio tower and how they fought, 5 years ago. And then he reveals that he's also part of the Allen Institute. He's also been supported by the Allen Institute. And Chisato, who didn't know this at the time, is like, that's stupid. Why would they support a terrorist? And he's like, because I'm the best terrorist, and you're the best killer. They want us to fight. That's what they do. So you get this kind of really... It's weird. It's not like a redemption for Majima, but it makes him a little bit more interesting, because at this point, he and Chisato have a lot in common, and they get engaged on the movies they like, and they talk about how they're so similar because they've both been essentially raised to be killers their entire life. It's like they have completely different beliefs, but they have very similar backgrounds, and I think it's an interesting dynamic they have during this time. Majima also tries to shoot Chisato, who dodges it very casually, and he freaks out. He thinks it's the coolest shit. Mm-hmm. And then Takina comes and almost kills Majima, but he leaves, and then she gives Chisato a dog keychain. And so Takina says you should probably go get your checkup to make sure that your heart is okay. And wouldn't you know it, Yoshimatsu sabotaged Chisato's heart because she won't kill people for him. And so he is now the biggest bastard in the room. Mm.
Yep.
It's a good episode.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this one's solid. I think that obviously the gag part of it is the flavor of comedy in this show is difficult for me to describe, and it's hard for me to just outright defend or appreciate or dislike. It's weird, but I think I'm glad it's there as opposed to doing something more dry. I'll come back around to that in a moment, but more importantly on Majima, I do agree. This is a humanizing moment for him. It's not quite sympathizing. He's not redeeming himself, right? But we are at least we're seeing that he and Chisato are confronting that it's in some ways it's the very played out you and we're the same. But it's not inaccurate. They both want to, see sort of the fall of the DA, or at least they don't believe in it as a force of good. In that anarchic sense, they kind of get along. It's just that Chisato is working on her goals one little favor and act of good at a time, as transformative justice, whereas Majima wants to do it with the bang, right? To essentially get the job done right and quick by using violence,
right,
and lethal violence at that, right? And so it's clearly you're not going to sympathize with Majima. Certainly not in any full sense, right? But it's when it's this is what it does, right? It causes this complication, and that I think is one of the really valuable parts of this show, that the elements seem simple, but it's not throwing its hands up really quickly and saying it's a gray moral area and that's it. And it's not saying, it's a black and white issue and that's it. It is it's very specific and it's very situated. And so I think that gives it more meat than something that would just be like anime platitudes, right? Like
Right.
this is not quite, well, since we've already talked about Trigun, I'll just bring it back to Trigun again. This is not, Vash being told when young, hey, don't kill. These are like more refined principles that they have, right? They're not just platitudes. Um, it's defined by like how they've been raised. Chisato feels like protecting people and saving people is important because she was saved. Um, she feels kind of indebted to humanity. Whereas Majima is cut out from that picture. Um, you know, Majima has incredible power on an individual level, but cannot really use that to exercise within society. Um, at least certainly not for the goals that he wants, right? That those things are disconnected. He's been given, incredible physical ability at a cost, and so the way he's been radicalized and used, he's continuing that trajectory, right? Like, oh, I've seen that people get rattled up. I've seen that I can survive these situations, and that like people react when I do that. And so I'm going to keep doing that. That reactionary angle to him, I think is a. It's not subtle, but it's also not clear cut, in my opinion. So.
Mm-hmm. No, I agree.
Then there's the poop platter.
And there's the poop platter, right? But the show wants there to be this belief that Lycoris is a safe place for people.
Mm-hmm.
And it's evident by the fact that they have like game nights. There's a community that's built around it. So it might seem silly, but I kind of like that they give Lycoris its own fan base, and they make it more believable as a cafe. Yeah. I like that about this show.
Mm-hmm. I feel like this is maybe the best time to talk about the tone of comedy, because I think after this we mostly get into like action and like the climax. So
the climax of this show is long, but in a good way.
Yes. So my thoughts on sort of how this show approaches comedy. I think it mostly works for me because it feels earnest. Or at least that like the premise of these situations are in earnest. Like, it's like, for example, hey, Takina wants to help out at the cafe. She's becoming more, involved in it, and accidentally ends up creating this like little like micro pop culture sensation on the incident that like it's a shitty looking dessert, but evidently it tastes good enough, and like, oh, a cute girl's gonna bring it to you. And it's like it gets a little weird. Like this is something that totally would have been mishandled in something like Journey of Elena.
Right.
But I think that because it's the way that it's paced and produced, it's not like there's this immediate like wah wah, kind of like with it. To an extent, they take it seriously, right? That like like the characters figure it out, maybe even before the viewer does, because I didn't I didn't register it at first entirely. That like, oh, it's poop dessert, which maybe that says something about me that it didn't occur to me. But anyways, right? Like I was kind of in the dark, like talking it, and I started to pick up on it later. But like that's kind of the beauty of how they're handling the comedy, is that they're like keeping it quiet, And as they're going through their montage, right, like they're scaling up those hints that like, oh, we're coming upon, the joke is going to be kind of blown into Takeda's face. It's weird. But I can appreciate that they're trying it and that they're treating this like, little family situation as something that again is like, it's humanized through accidents and awkwardness and things like that, right? It's not very tidy. And I think I'm okay with that. Like, it's not to be just like, oh, because these things happen, it's realistic, because I don't know if it is, but also this is a very cartoony show in some aspects. And so, like, yeah, there's a weird sort of asymmetric balance to how the comedy works. I don't think it always really hits. Sometimes, like, oh, okay, they're doing a gag, and I don't really care. I think Mizuki, kind of sometimes, like, it falls flat a little bit. I think she's maybe one of the more tropey characters, as like, oh, she's an older woman that can't get a date. But also, it's not dragging everything away to have her do that, and so as a result, it doesn't ruin it, right? Like, even if you find her kind of annoying as a character, it's probably not going to like disrupt your enjoyment of the show too much. And although like her emotions are more excessive than even the other cast members, it doesn't. At first, it didn't fall too far out for me to just totally break from the show. I think Robota is actually also another case of this, where there's a disconnect in that, like, he's on, sort of the antagonist side of the equation. It's, tense situations, wall to wall. He's having his life threatened in basically every episode, and he's totally being abused. But, like, so, like, for him to be treated as a gag is like, that's a little dark. But like, I also think if he wasn't acting so excessively, then it would have also not felt right either. I think overacting Robota, more so than Mizuki, does feel like it fits in somehow. Like, I can't really like visualize the shape of the puzzle piece this is, but it works. I'd say the easy stuff to write out is like, don't draw Kurumi naked, just cut it out. Like, I think right. There's like two cases where it's like, it's not obscene, but it's like, you didn't have to do that, just don't, like.
Right.
And of the cast, like, she's like the only one. So again, it's like, like pull on the collar, like, are we gonna be cool, everybody? So yeah, that's where it crosses the line for me, for sure.
Yeah, I agree.
But it also doesn't help that it's not funny. It's like, this did not have a place in the show. Yeah, that's my feeling on like the comedic tone. Did you have any other thoughts you wanted to add to that, or like,
No, that's a lot of the way that I look at it. I think there's this issue in which sometimes it's hard to pull away from tropes for anime, and it can be really, really apparent. But yeah, you hit the nail on the head right there.
Okay, really quick. Favorite gag is when they're doing the bar sting with Mika and Yoshimatsu, and Kurumi has an effectively faked ID for being like 30 years old, I think.
Yes.
And Mizuki in turn tries to act like she's 20. It's very funny.
I like when Mizuki and Kurumi interact with each other. I think there's some fun stuff. I also like that we haven't really talked about this, but Mika will just like talk to Kurumi about this deep shit, and like he'll explain to like Kurumi like the problems with the world, and it's like, dude, this is a kid.
Yeah.
and Kurumi's like, yeah, I get that, old man. And I'm like, fucking wild. The next episode kind of goes into, now that Chisato's heart is broken, she only has about 6 months to live, and it does a little backstory about how she received her artificial heart. Essentially, the Allen Institute was interested in sponsoring her as like an assassin, and they arranged Chisato to receive an artificial heart that was made by another Allen Institute person, but Mika has to raise Chisato as a daughter and ensure that she will use her talent for killing people. But Chisato got the gun from Yoshimatsu and was essentially like, well, if he wants me to not die, then no one else should die. And Mika's like, yeah, that's fair. And so Mika just does not hold up his side of the deal. He raises Chisato in a way that nurtures her like empathy, and I think it's a really cool dynamic that they show. And if I could see that being a whole other beast in terms of storytelling, but you only got 13 episodes, so it's a flashback. And everyone decides that, well, if Yoshimatsu can save Takina, let's kill Yoshimatsu. Like, everyone gets on board with killing this guy. And Majima learns about how Yoshimatsu is manipulating Chisato to kill, and he's like, well, I'll attack the new radio tower, and as a way to lure them out. And the DA accepts Takina back, and Takina's like, I'm going to work with the DA so I can help you, Chisato. I don't want to go back to the DA, but if it can help you, I will. And so you see this really good dynamic in which Takina, whose original purpose was to get back to the DA, is now going back to the DA to help her friend. And I think that's a really good character arc that we get to see in the short amount of time. They also go on a little date where they do a bunch of stuff, and Takina gives Chisato a scarf. And boy, oh boy, is it gay as hell. It's a good episode. It's a really good episode.
Yeah, I agree.
Do you have anything specifically you want to say? I don't think there's like nothing to say about that episode. It is just like good. Yeah,
I agree. Do you want to, at this point, like, because we've had at least a couple of these times where it's like, oh, it's very gay, and like, it's not like they're officially dating verbally in the show, but you stumbled on something. I think that was it Chisato's voice actress posted about how Chisato has acted with Takina. I feel like you found a comment from one of the voice actresses kind of trying to confirm that, like, yes, it's not just like gals being pals.
Let me see if I can find it. I know what you're talking about. But there's a lot of subtext. Like, obviously there's not a lot of they don't kiss, right? They don't kiss, which sucks. But
I agree, there's a lot of subtext. I feel like maybe I am encouraged to bring it up because I found that, like, the discursive internet at large wants nothing but text, as we've kind of seen with the whole Guilty Gear Strive Bridget situation, where people will not accept that Bridget is trans, even after the game creator is like, hey, yeah, she is. Like, nails in the coffin are not enough anymore. So, like, if this blows up in our faces and for some reason they don't become a couple in the inevitable season 2, then consider me queer-baited, but, like, goddamn, the subtext is clear to me, and that's how I'm gonna read it.
And it's not that you can't have girls just being actual friends. Like, I understand that there's probably a lot of times where we'll take we'll take things out of context, or we'll be like, oh man, wouldn't it be cool if this happened? And there's a lot of hope for it. But I feel like there is a whole lot more in this show.
Mm-hmm.
You look at all the heteronormative anime where the main character doesn't end up kissing the main female character, despite that being a very prominent thing, right? It allows for people to, what's the thing?
Plausible deniability.
Plausible deniability. That's right. It allows it so that if people don't want to see it and they're like, oh well, they never actually did it, and it's like, yeah, they didn't.
Yeah, y'all are missing out. if that's you listening right now, I'm sorry. You're living a sadder life, and you could use some lesbians.
And I don't think that means that you can't have gal pals who are actually gal pals, mm-hmm. right? People who are friends and have this relationship, but the way that they do this is not in that way. Mm-hmm. And I think that this show could have been gayer, but I also understand why people could not. Mm-hmm. There's also the spinoff announcement. That's what it was. I don't know if it was the author, but there's a spinoff announcement that apparently has a lot more gay stuff. Gotcha. I couldn't find what I sent you, but if we find it, I'll send it to you. Mm-hmm. No, yeah. So they're a good couple. Mm-hmm. I think. Agreed. And that shows in the action scenes that we're getting into in this sort of ending triumphant climax. Let's move on to the finale. So after they do that, Chisato is like, well, I'm not gonna be alive. So we're gonna close down Lycoris. Mizuki and Kurumi decide that they're gonna go work in foreign countries as agents. And then Kusunoki is like, oh shit, the radio tower is gonna be attacked, and Majima's gonna go there. And so Takina confirms at the Allen's Institute with Majima, and then Majima has taken Yoshimatsu hostage and brings him to the radio tower. And so the Lycoris attack it, and they use this as a way to essentially announce that the Lycoris exist. And they tell the state that there's a bunch of teenage girls going around killing people that they deem as evil, and also Majima has hidden a bunch of guns around. Mm. And so a bunch of people now have access to guns, and so there's this weird tension where they don't know what to do, and so a bunch of stuff happens. Mm-hmm. Yep. This is where we see someone stumbles upon a gun, picks it up, and a police officer sees said gun, panics and fires. And so now it's just so total distrust. Mm-hmm. And you continue to kind of see these situations. Mm-hmm. Not to say that there aren't bad faith actors that they're also illustrating, but I think that example was particularly striking. Yes. Couldn't tell you why I feel so strongly about that one. But yeah. But yes, it's good. And it kind of sets in motion with how the rest of this will go. Here's a little fun fact about the next episode 11. So in the middle of every scene, there's these little eye catches which will have the characters and poses wearing different outfits. Mm-hmm. And in episode 11, it had a picture of Chisato and Takina smoking the Lycoris flower, which is poisonous. Mm-hmm. And so they had to change it. Oh. I was like, so, yeah, it's a metaphor, a la Utena, it's like, oh, I poisoned your biscuit, well, I poisoned your tea, and they're all happy about it, But no, we didn't see the remake because we watched it when it got released, mm-hmm. but they replaced it on September 30th. Well, damn. And so during this time, the Lycoris prepare their assault, and Chisato has been confirmed to be deployed, because they don't deploy Chisato unless they need to. And then they realize that there is an improved version of Chisato's artificial heart that they currently have. So Kurumi and Mizuki are like, fine, we won't leave the country, we're going to save Chisato. And we know he has the artificial heart on top of the tower. And then they realize that, oh shit, this is a trap to get Chisato to kill this person. Mm-hmm. It's pretty... There's some really good fight scenes. Like, there's a part where Majima makes it completely dark so Chisato can't, like, read his moves. And then, like, she's about to die, and then Takina breaks through the wall, and it just lights up the place, and then it allows them to beat the shit out of Majima. Mm-hmm. It was fucking tight as hell.
Yeah. If there's one thing that this show's really good at, it's letting the action scenes move.
Yeah.
You're not getting these moments of, like, anime time where, like, things kind of stop and someone explains what's happening. They probably benefited by the fact that this is not adapted from anything, so that means that they don't have, like, say, remnants of the script that they have to feel obligated to keep in during the action scenes. They can just let it flow.
Yeah. And I really like the visual of it being dark and Takina busting through as the light. Mm-hmm. It's very on the nose, but it's very cool.
Yeah, it works.
And so they fight Majima, and then they end up saving Yoshimatsu, who has put the artificial heart inside of him, meaning that if Chisato wants it, she needs to kill him. And Takina doesn't fucking hesitate to kill that bitch. Like, it is one of the coolest shit. I find it frustrating in anime where there's a character who has been willing to kill before suddenly isn't willing to kill someone who really deserves it. But Takina doesn't give it. Takina's like, I'm gonna do it. Mm-hmm. I'm gonna kill this motherfucker right here, right now. And Chisato stops her, and she basically says she doesn't want to trade her life for another person's life. And then they are told that that Lily Bell is being deployed to kill Lycoris. So we get a callback to Lily Bell, which is essentially the male version of Lycoris. It's a group of teenage boys who do the same thing as Lycoris, and it's sort of implied that they don't see eye to eye, which is interesting. Mm-hmm. But we don't get too much of it. Although we definitely see a character who is way too designed to be a throwaway character. He's like dressed and like prepared. Him and Chisato have this knowing agreement and stare from each other.
His name is Season 2.
Yeah. And so during this time, Kurumi manages to sell to the citizens that the entire gunfight was a publicity stunt for a social media event. And as Lycoris start to leave, Majima once again manages to get Chisato separate from everybody else. So it's just Majima and Chisato, no one else. And he has a bomb that will destroy the tower in 1 hour. And since it can only run on auxiliary power, Takina's like, well, shit, I'm going to go help Chisato. And Chisato and Majima are basically 1-to-1. They can't kill each other. And there's a part where Chisato heart begins to fuck up. And even though there's not anime time, Majima stops the fight. He's like, I don't want to kill you if you're like this. And once again, they have a discussion. And Majima sees himself as this, like, he's like, hey, don't you see that the DA is kind of terrible in how they treat people? And Chisato's like, yeah, but I also want to help people. And so there's this, once again, the same thing that we saw earlier. They have similar beliefs, but they're going at it in completely different ways. And once again, they don't try and make Majima a good guy, but they let you understand his reasoning. Mm-hmm. And during this time, Mika meets up with Yoshimatsu and just He's been walking on a crutch this whole time, and Yoshimatsu's secretary and assassin Himigawa, who is the one that sabotaged Chisato's heart, goes to attack him, and he's been faking his leg injury the whole time. And
maybe, or it's also possible that he does have like chronic pain, but he doesn't need it all the time.
He does tell Yoshimatsu that you don't tell everyone your secrets.
Yeah.
So either way, he's either been doing a long con, or it's not been something that's been as debilitating all the time. Mm-hmm. But he just like, you don't get to see Mika do a lot of cool stuff, but this part is so cool, mm-hmm. and it's easily one of the best scenes in the entire show. So after Mika defeats Himigawa, he kills Yoshimatsu, mm-hmm. who he loved, right? Like, this is a character that this character loved, but he realizes that there is no... He would rather see Chisato alive. So he kills him, mm-hmm. and it's really good.
Yeah.
And so Majima, it goes back to Majima and Chisato, and they're on the tower and it's breaking, and they start to fall, and as they fall, you realize that the countdown was not actually a detonator. It was like for fireworks or something. Mm-hmm. And they were just trying to get Chisato to kill someone again, and Majima does appear to die, because he gets launched off the tower and Takina saves her. And they manage to track down the guns, and then Majima is still alive and he still has some of the guns. And Chisato dips. She's like, I'm out of here. And no one knows where she's at. And eventually they manage to find her, and they go to Hawaii. And they start a mobile cafe truck where they work as basically freelance people to help people. And hell, man, it was cute as fuck.
Yeah. Just to add here, in this final episode, we've mentioned before that Chika Anzai, the voice actress for Chisato, really does an exceptional job. An absolutely incredible range of emotion, and the way that she breaks kind of typical voice acting, like, I go, you go, that kind of thing. It really works, right? It feels very organic. And whether it's in the action scenes or in regular conversation and comedic timing, the way that she can make voice acting feel like conversational talk, while still upholding that professional pedigree of we're voicing for a show and this is a character. It's top-notch stuff. But I don't want to undermine the other performances here. All the performances are great. Majima and Mizuki and Robota and Kurumi and Mika, I think, are all landing exactly where they need to. I couldn't think of any other voices to put in those characters. But I do want to give this last mention to Shion Wakayama, because the screams that she does as Takina when things are getting intense here in this final episode are oh shit.
They're very good.
In the same way that Chisato's conversational speech sounds almost too human, I would say the same for Takina's blood curdling yells and stuff. It's whoo, that got me shaken.
Yeah, the people that made this show, whoever was the voice director, really went hard. Really went hard. And I think it's something that you don't realize and it can be hard when you're listening to a language you don't really understand, right? And so it can be a little difficult to feel that emotion, but when you watch the show, it's really good.
It's different, yeah.
It does, and I think that this show has one of the best voice acting in a long time.
Yeah. I do think that there's some amount of this that it's directorial, or somehow like the way that they structure how they do the voice acting. What it reminds me of, I've listened to, like, very rare cases, but I have listened to a few like bits of drama CDs and stuff from anime, or like, hey, it's the voice actors that are kind of talking about stuff, and that also takes on that same, like, conversational affect, right? Where like, you know, it doesn't sound like they are reading off of a script. It sounds like they're playing their characters, like, improv. And particularly, I can say I was listening to some of that with the Nichijou voice actors, and the, like, you know, they'll make each other laugh, you know, and stuff. It's just, again, it doesn't feel like it's written off of a script necessarily. I rarely get that in anime, and it really, this is one of those cases where it feels like they're tapping into that. You know, this is not particularly typical for anime, at least not that I've seen. So kudos.
Yeah. No, yeah, absolutely. It's fucking good. Yeah. The show was good. So that's Lycoris Recoil.
Yeah. What lessons would you want other shows to take from this, besides, like, the voice acting?
I think anime has a problem with making characters multifaceted. And I know that there's a lot of reasons to do that. And I know that sometimes you're strapped for time and you can't really develop it, but there's something to go to say with, like, writing Chisato as this ginky, happy girl who wants to be everyone's best friend and wants to help out, but also is the best killer in the world and also is constantly in a threat of dying, right? There is a way to do that that's wrong, right? Where you lampshade it as like I want everybody to be happy and I want everyone to live their life to the fullest, and that's it. But giving these long character motifs where you are exploring their reasonings and you're exploring their backstory and you're doing it in a way that is efficient. I think the fact that there is only like half an episode dedicated to Sasato's backstory, and yet she feels more complete than most characters in anime, I think that's something that needs to be adapted better. And that could be by having less characters in your main cast. That could be by developing more tied together and like braided story arcs that allow the action to keep going while also allowing you to see into the life of your characters. And it's not just with that. Like, Takina is a really good example. You see her and she is the monotone, do everything the right way, but you see her develop away from that, and you see it happen relatively quick, but not to certain extremes. But seeing her goof off in the aquarium, and then her in the next episode dance because she beat Chisato in rock, paper, scissors, while also trying to keep Rico afloat financially. I think it's important to do that. I think it's important to use what you have and focus on your characters.
Yeah.
Like, I compare it, like if we want to compare it to, as you said earlier, Majo no Tabi Tabi, right? We didn't see any growth from any of the characters, right? They were their same tropey and they will occasionally expedite why they're different, but we don't really see it. I think Lycoris Recoil, we see it. We don't hear anyone go, "Wow, Takina, you're in a better mood than you usually are," or "That was a really responsible and nice thing you did, Kurumi." They just do it, and I like that.
Yeah, I think that it's allowing the characters to be characters and not to speak as the author patting themselves in the back. You know, like you mentioned, like that's like a really great example. It's like when characters will point out like, "Oh, you don't normally do that often," or that kind of thing. Like real people don't do that typically. Like it's like occasionally, like, you know, if people are working through things, then yeah, we'll say like, "Hey, you know, that's I'm really thankful that you did that for me," or that kind of thing. But when you have a rapport with people, then you don't talk at people about people, you know, not very often. At least, you know, again, a Americentric view here, but even so, like the fact that things happen and it just carries forward, I think makes a lot of the show feel more natural. I think it's why some of the comedy can flop a little bit, and it doesn't feel like it totally knocks the show off of its tracks.
Yeah, teenagers are cringe, and sometimes they have to be cringe.
Yeah, yeah. You know, there are plenty of things that we can just sort of reason, like, oh, I guess maybe that happens in real life, or I guess, yeah, some people maybe just act like that. You know, it's a diverse world we live in. And so I think when the show doesn't deliberate on that itself in text, or it doesn't, like, you know, throw up its eyebrows at you, you know, I think that it's confident. You know, it's like, yeah, here's what we have. What do you think of it? And it just gives it to you. I can appreciate that. You know, for a very like modern style story where it does have these kind of clear directives that it's painting out for you. The fact that it's not conducting its own kind of victory laps, I think, is like it's something that I appreciate looking back.
Yeah.
Yeah. I also really appreciate the representation in the show. I think it's handled really well. As you mentioned, everything kind of feels meaningful and purposeful. That it's not just like, oh, let's tack something in. You know, like I think like Mika is at risk of maybe feeling like he's been overloaded. You know, he's a black Japanese disabled gay man. Which like, you know, that's a lot of marginal elements to load onto one character in an anime. But I don't think any of those turn him into a caricature, right? None of those are like caricature like elements to him.
Mika's first identity is father figure.
Yeah.
Like everything else is his background and who he is, but like he is a protector and a father essentially. And part of it's kind of cute seeing Chisato like follow him, and she's like, "Oh shit, he's on a date. I forgot." And it's like, that's kind of cute, right? But it's done in a way that allows Mika to really shine as a character, right? Like, yes, he is a gay man. He's a gay man who was in love with a man who essentially cursed him with the burden of raising a daughter that's going to die, and he still chooses his essentially daughter over him, and it's good, right? It's an incredible way to utilize what he was written to be and make it meaningful.
Yeah. And I think that he and Yoshimatsu as a couple are acted well enough, and you know, and drawn and everything, in such a way where it's another one of those like, oh, they get it moments. It doesn't feel like it's just a way to connect Mika and Yoshimatsu on the corkboard. You know, like, I think it really works. I think that there's earned tension there. And the moments where, like, Yoshimatsu will exploit that against Mika, right? Where, like, he'll make these, like, romantic advances and stuff. You know, like, again, it's like, you don't accidentally nail that.
Yes.
Yeah. when it comes to Chisato's failing heart and, Majima's hearing, like, I think these also are like, they're well implemented. Like, the fact that, like, Majima is not a character that you sympathize with for his, like, views, but, like, you do feel this, like sad sort of, like, bitterness when, like, they'll, like, use his hearing against him to, in the fight with him, they'll blow out his ears, but with a loud noise. Like, there, yeah.
Yeah, it's frustrating because in the times where he is sitting down with Chisato, you realize that those two could probably get to each other's goals, right? But they want to go at it at such different extremes that you empathize with the frustration that Majima feels. Mm-hmm. You really do. And if he wasn't such a bastard in so many other ways, he'd be one of the most empathetic villains ever. Mm-hmm. But they make him a bastard because even though he has noble intentions, he still sucks. Mm-hmm. And I like that. I like that they don't try and make him a hero.
Yeah. This is a show of like, people who have, like, weak points, right? That it's like, we're not gonna treat, Chisato's failing heart as this, like, non-thing, right? It's like, this is going to be integral to her as, like, someone whose world revolves around helping people and making your identity about that. And, like, that exertion is something that's going to put her ability to do that at risk. We're going to, like, center that. Mm-hmm. When we have, like, it's just like, it all feels like, purposeful. When you have a cast that's so full of, like, a cast that, you have these, like, weak points that everyone has, that, whether it's, like, Chisato having her heart, or Takina having Chisato, or, Mika having Yoshimatsu, and, Majima having Chisato also, like, you have all these exposed weak points that people have to grapple with. It's a case where a lot of these situations are about people exploiting people. Mm-hmm. But the show triumphs when it shows how to, like, when people don't take that option, right? When they could do it, but they choose not to. Or they at least have to grapple very hard with it, right? Like, when it comes down to Mika and Yoshimatsu, and Yoshimatsu's out of options, right? Mika takes advantage of that, and Mika, kills him right there. But it doesn't feel like, it feels earned that was mm-hmm. where it went. And it doesn't feel like it disrupts the overall narrative about trust and about good faith. That it's like, it's gonna get messy, but, it doesn't want to shy away from the idealism that Chisato's carrying and that other people are getting into at Lycoris Recoil, and then as we kind of see, like, sort of fanning out into the DA and stuff like that. So
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think we can move on to themes, and maybe I feel like we've talked enough about characters. Takina is a good version of her. Like, they're tropey at times, but they're just the best versions of the trope a lot of the times.
Yeah, people should take notes.
I don't think I have any more to say about characters than what we've already said. Majima is a good antagonist. Mika's a great mentor teacher. Chisato and Takina have a lot of chemistry together. It's good. It's great.
Yeah. In terms of themes, I feel like good faith versus bad faith is a big one. It's like, that's kind of what's upholding the conflict between Chisato and Majima. Do you trust this stuff to work?
Yeah. And it's a lot of those ideas. It's like, what is the illusion of peace worth, right? Mm-hmm. Is state control worth having most people live a peaceful life? Or is it not peace unless it is brought upon by the people who are experiencing peace? Mm-hmm. I wish we would delve deeper into that, and I feel like if we do get a second season, we will. I think the introduction of Lily Bell allows them to make an antagonist with a very similar philosophy
Right.
to Lycoris, without it directly criticizing the organization that the main characters work for. However, I wish we would see more of that.
Agreed. Yeah. And I think if there's one other thing that maybe I take away from the show, it's that we live for others. Like, yeah, okay, it's like, it's a found family story, so of course, like, that is a part of it. And of course, there's the individualist enemy, and so, like, that kind of naturally builds itself. But I think that where the strain is placed in the show really makes this, like, ring true. So, like, you know, Takina has her initial decision to risk her team's safety and to get into the trolley problem. You know, like, they're putting strain on what it means about, like, you know, trusting others and, like, attempting to protect others, right? Like, what scope is that? Are we talking, like, I'm protecting, you know, the city by not protecting this small group of people here? You know, those kinds of things, right? That's what we're grappling with. You know, Chisato and Mika are struggling to give up Yoshimatsu, even when they can identify that they're being used. You know, again, it's like, at the core, they want to live for this other person, but, you know, that's difficult in this situation. You know, Yoshimatsu does not make it easy for them.
Yeah, he's a bastard.
Yeah.
He fucking sucks.
When we were watching this, we had a few people with us when we were doing so. Did anybody cheer when he got shot?
No, because it's a dramatic part. Like, everyone was like, oh, fuck.
Yeah.
Because it's Mika crying as he pulls a trigger off screen.
Yeah. You know what? Oh, no, I think I'm thinking of the name of his Yoshimatsu's assistant,
Himagawa.
Okay, yeah, I think when she was getting her shit rocked, I think that's when we popped off. That's probably what I was thinking.
Yeah, that part fucking ruled. It fucking rules.
But yeah, like, okay, and then the DA members, when they're starting to value themselves, and then, like, it starts as, like, them apart from each other, but then it becomes like, oh, you know, these people who don't maybe talk to each other a lot are actually having to talk to each other. Or someone finally gets the confidence to be like, hey, I think Takina was right for doing this, even though I was, you know, kind of a victim in this situation. You know, they're constantly straining the idea of what it means to live for other people. But I feel like that's why it's at the core of it, because it survives as a message all the way to the end. Majima is seeking out Chisato, who is, like, as best as he can tell, the one person who could stop him, right? So there's, like, a heightened risk out of this for the return of, hey, I'm going to meet someone who is like me. You know, I'm going to maybe meet someone who understands me. And that's worth possibly getting my ass kicked for it. Yeah. So
yeah, it's good.
Even though it's not easy, we live for others. Also, fuck cops and fuck the military state.
Yeah. I hope we get more of that in season 2.
Me too.
I hope we get more of that, and I hope we get a kiss.
Me too.
That's all I want. That's all I want.
Yeah.
Do you have any hypotheticals?
Yes. I have one, but it's a long one. Oh
fuck.
Okay, I'm gonna here we go. Imagine that we have the main cast, which I'm gonna delimit to Chisato, Takina, Kurumi, Mika, Mizaki, and Majima. Okay, so it's all of them, and they're going to a viewing of Lycoris Recoil, like movie stars would go to, like, to, you know, the initial showing or whatever. So let's assume that their actual personalities are, like, mostly like their anime counterparts. How would they act at the showing?
So they're going to see all 13 episodes of Lycoris Recoil in one sitting.
In this dream scenario, yes, because it's funnier that way.
Okay, or are they going to see, like, a movie version of it?
We could paint it either way. Yeah.
Okay, have the events of Lycoris Recoil happened?
Let's say they're actors, and so
Okay.
but like it just so happens that they very much resemble the characters they played, in terms of personality and stuff.
I feel like Takino would talk about how inaccurate some of the shit is. She'd be like, "No, that's," or like if it was a real thing, she'd be like, "That's not how it happened." I feel like Chisato would love, like, because she loves action movies, right? Like, she fucking loves action movies.
Yeah.
They have the part where you see her fucking table and it has a bunch of like Guy Hard and shit like that. I feel like she would hate the slice of life shit. I feel like she would be like, there needs to be more explosions, and she'd want more people to die.
That's a really funny take. I love that.
Because like if she's like, oh, this person needs to die, why are they not killing him? Why are they not blowing him up? And it's like, well, understandable. Mika wouldn't say anything. He would be like he'd be like a dad coming out of a movie, right? Like, he would appreciate it, but he's not gonna look at it any deeper. He's just gonna be like, oh yeah, this is the show. It was pretty good.
What do you think about it? It's good. It's fine.
It was good. And you're like, do you have any thoughts? No. He'll watch it when it comes on FX, and he won't change the channel.
Yeah.
And I think that is important. I feel like Kurumi wouldn't pay for it. She'd watch it later for free after she pirates it.
Yeah.
I also don't think that she is one to go out and do things. So
that's true.
Mizuki would I think Mizuki would be upset that she did not have as many cool parts, and she'd be like, why did they paint me like that? Why did they treat me like that? They did me dirty. And Majima would think that it's state propaganda.
Very excellent. My thought, I had some similar thoughts. Mika, I thought would keep dozing off, but then he'd get woken up whenever Mizuki has to walk past him because she chugged her drink at the beginning, like in the first 20 minutes.
Yes.
And so every time she has to get past him, he wakes up again. I think whenever Mizuki shows up on screen, she just like shouting and like, wah, like going wild. I think Chisato would sort of do something similar, but only when Takina shows up on screen. Like Takina would show up and just go, like an excited little gasp. And every time, and then sometimes she'll look over at Takina to see if Takina's reacting, but Takina's not budging because she's just she's zoned into the movie. Whenever there's supposed to be an embarrassing part, it's Takina and is being made fun of. I feel like she would pretend to drop something on the theater floor and then very conspicuously lean over to pick it up, but then just stay bent over until that part was over. And at which point Kurumi would be tossing pieces of popcorn, trying to get it into Chisato's mouth, past her, so she's in between them. I also think that whenever Chisato, when she first shows up, I think she'd try to take a selfie with herself on the screen, but then her phone camera's not focusing because it's dark in there or whatever, and so she turns on her flash and then Takina just immediately shuts her down for it. I also think Kurumi would be live streaming it if she was there. So she would be the one making the illegal copy of it. And then let's see. And then Majima would keep predicting what they were going to do next in the editing. So he'd be like, oh, this part's coming up next, or and cut, that kind of thing. And then whenever he gets it right, he just like fist pumps. And he's just he would be telling this to someone who he doesn't know, like who's next to him.
So I have a hypothetical too.
Oh God, tell me about it.
Yeah. Oh, so after the crew travels to Hawaii to start their little food truck, what goofs and gaffes do you think people are hiring them to do in Hawaii? Like they're obviously known as problem solvers, but like what do you think their first big prolific case was?
Drive out white landowners.
Hey Chisato, you guys have an advertisement for we will do anything you want. These rich fucks are annoying. Take care of them.
You want to change some property values?
Just goes out and starts shooting in the
Rent lowering gunshots. What did you have in mind? What were you thinking?
Well, have you ever seen Hawaii 5-0? Or heard of Hawaii 5-0?
Yeah, I heard of it in like the cultural zeitgeist, but I think I might have seen like a reboot of it, like on USA.
Yeah, or like Magnum PI.
Yeah, I get the
which
gist.
are cop shows that. Yeah, I feel like there would be one, and as Chisato's doing it, she's like, I'm pretty sure this is a Magnum PI episode.
Oh, that's great. Life imitates art.
Do you have anything else to say about the show we saw?
I think I've said enough. I liked it a whole lot better than I thought I would. I can recommend it, I think, very easily.
I think it's definitely one of those shows. I showed a few of my friends who are like not super into anime, but like will watch anime, and they liked it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it's got good general appeal without sacrificing its identity as this kind of interesting radical political show. So good balance.
So just so you know, while I was looking up the thing about that I supposedly sent you about Lycoris being gay, I did find a picture that said anime 22 the year of Yuri, and it had June and Daibanana.
Good.
It had Chisato and Takina.
Good.
And then it had Suleta and Mironi.
Good.
And it's just like, there's literally our entire anime zeitgeist we've been fucking looking at.
You know it.
Oh, fuck yeah. Alright.
Speaking of which, we are watching Mobile Suit Gundam, The Witch from Mercury.
G-Witch. I fucking love it.
We probably will review it, but we have goddamn a lot to dig through before we get there.
Well, the good news is we still have like 12 episodes before it's over.
It's very true. Yeah, Gundam's gonna be long, so that.
Yeah, I got a text message from one of my friends today because I told him I was looking for. Holy shit! I told him I was looking for the aerial model to build because I've never built a Gundam before, and he sends me and he goes, "Hey, Amazon has one for $50."
Oh
And I'm like, are you fucking serious? And they're like incredibly rare. And so I actually just went to go check on my order and they restocked it, but now it's at $80. Because they use like Gundam sellers. It's fucking nuts. It's an incredible show. We're not talking about it now, but we'll talk about it later. Watch Lycoris Recoil. Hey Brantley, what's the next show we're gonna review?
Probably Yurei Deco, I think, or
either Yurei Deco or
Tokyo Mew
the
Mew
reboot
Mew.
Tokyo Mew Mew. Hopefully they'll come out a lot sooner than this one came out from our last one.
Yeah.
Sorry for the delay. We're busy people. We're busy, and I know we've been saying that a lot, but hot damn, we're fucking busy.
If you want to hear more often, where can people do that?
They can go to Twitch, and they can see us on twitch.tv/familiar territory, where we play video games that we want to play. Right now, we're going through Sonic Frontiers, which I am enjoying a lot more than I thought I would. If you are interested in that, you should follow us on there. You can follow me on Twitter I don't tweet much since it's kind of going into a sinkhole collapse, but it's fun to watch it collapse. You could also subscribe to us on YouTube. Or you don't need to do any of that because we are not your dads. So the first episode
before you
is...
do that, sorry.
What'd you say?
I left my closet door open. I'm going to close it just in case it helps reduce some volume, so I want to do that before you get into the plot stuff. So let me
Brantley's fucked up.
All right.
Jesus Christ.
Sorry.
No, it's really
My
funny.
picked
Just
that up.
a large...
Okay.